So thank you everyone for being here with us today, launching our series. And I would like to start by asking you all to just sit comfortably, check inside, notice whatever you do notice, whether you have some constriction or you're relaxed in whatever way you know yourself to be. And from this place, I'm going to read a poem. And when I'm done, I would appreciate everyone just listening to my questions after that. And then we'll open it up. So this poem is called "And the People Stayed Home." And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being. And some were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced. Some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently. And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth itself began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they have been healed. So this is a poem by Kitty O'Meara. She's a teacher in Madison, Wisconsin, and she's been turning to poetry to tame her anxiety during the pandemic. And I really see this poem as the blessing that we hope to have in the future. And take a moment now, and I'm going to invite some of you to raise your hands and just share what your felt sense was as you were listening to this poem. And then we'll be able to move from there. So we have a number of people who have shared their reactions with the group. And the goal of this whole program is to help people turn from reactivity to receptivity. So those of you who have really felt receptive to this poem might have a different experience than others. So let's go on. Can I have the next slide, please? All right, so we all need warm fuzzies, regardless of who we are. In this image, the people are suited up in their hazmat suits, fully bound up with the little beautiful slippers for emotional protection. So the meaning of this is very clear. Even when we do our best to protect others and ourselves, if we don't do it with a little bit of heart and softness, then it won't penetrate. Now, it's interesting that the slippers are on the feet, and the feet are what get grounded to the earth. So I don't think it's a coincidence, but I invite you guys to think about it and see what you think. And let's go to the next slide. So this one, if you can see it, you'll all get PowerPoint recordings of this, so please don't worry and please don't assume you have to take notes. All of you can see that, right? Those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it, yet those who do study are doomed to stand by helplessly while everyone else repeats it. This appeared on a listserv and I copied it down, but honestly, the history, when it shows up in the present, shows up as hysterical. If it's hysterical, it's often historical. In order to stay in the present, history has to be put back into historical long-term memory systems through the hippocampus, and we'll go into the brain functioning in trauma shortly. Only when awareness and presence are accessible can historical memories be reconsolidated and reimagined to create future possibilities. For those who are analytically trained, the reconsolidation, according to a famous neuropsychoanalyst who a lot of us have met and worked with, Mark Solms, he believes that transference is what is a reconsolidation of earlier memories, fragments that come up, and through the transference, they get known. And in this work, we deal a lot with the somatic transference that gets evoked even on screens, I have to tell you. So let me go on, okay, to this. Okay. In both the midst and aftermath of trauma, a sense of dis-ease remains, often without memory or desire. Trauma destroys the flow of time and the faith to go on being. Shelter is non-existent. There is no safe house, and there is no body home. Restoring people's connection to their own body, and you don't have to use the word body, I'll show you later, enables interconnectivity to flourish despite physical isolation. If we can help people connect to their own body states, they develop a level of awareness, and that translates to the connectivity with other people as well. We're all born to connect. We come into this world as dependent creatures. And if we don't have enough of that, we can never be fully independent. And that is, in the attachment literature, what we know. Let me go on here. Okay, these are characteristics of trauma. I think most of you know this, but this is just the backdrop for the specific work we'll be doing. In trauma, time stops, and the nervous system has three options. I'll get into the brain in trauma, and I'll get into the nervous system and how the two link up together. So you can take a quick look at this slide: overwhelm and loss of control, the lack of completing defensive responses, imprints the conditioned associations of, what's that word? Of, I can't make it out. I took my glasses off.
Of the threat, sensory motor experience, traumatic cues, and the state of arousal within procedural memories.
Okay, so what this means is, in trauma, there is no time to orient. The reason trauma is so traumatic is it happens quickly without warning. We all have orienting responses to enable us to prepare to meet the world. But in trauma, those orienting responses go offline because you're suddenly hijacked by whatever trauma exists. Like if you ask people what their first experience was with the shutdown, they'll tell you, they'll know exactly where they were and what they were doing. And people hold those memories. Long after they forget those memories, they're embodied and embedded in the nervous system. And that is the whole idea behind Peter Levine's somatic experiencing, Pat Ogden's sensory motor psychotherapy, body dynamics, and more. And since I'm a training junkie, I've done most of them, and I'm happy to share what I can with all of you. So now let's go on to the next slide. No, that's not it. No, no, no. Back, back, back. No, we're going to, that's it. The character. Now, the next one is post-traumatic stress disorder. I think many of you know exactly what that is, but having a good definition always helps. So does somebody want to read that first paragraph out loud? Anybody volunteering to do that?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
This is Del Reed Abercrombie. Post-traumatic stress disorder among adults. Post-traumatic stress disorder is an anxiety disorder that can develop after exposure to a terrifying event or ordeal in which there was the potential for or actual occurrence of grave physical harm. Traumatic events that may trigger PTSD include violent personal assaults, natural or human-caused disasters, accidental, and military combat. People with PTSD have persistent, frightening thoughts and memories of their ordeal, may experience sleep problems, feel detached or numb, or be easily startled. Physical pain and visceral symptoms with no medical explanations are likely due to instinctual holding traumatic patterns related to self-protection, especially in the core, spinal muscles, muscle tensing, and pain in the head, neck, and back, explaining its often inexplicable persistence.
Right. And the body broadcasts what the mind cannot. So often there are no words or even thoughts connected to the symptoms that the body is broadcasting. That is the way the body communicates what it's holding in the nervous system and in the rest of the body. These are the symptoms that we see all the time with PTSD. Now, PTSD can also be from a mental ordeal. That was left out. It said physical, but I think we need to add mental. The piece about PTSD, and if you remember nothing else, this helps me always, and I explain this to my patients. It's if you have a computer and you have a program opened or a few, and you try to shut them all off, PTSD doesn't get shut off. In other words, that one computer file will keep flashing no matter how many ways you try to shut the computer. It's alive, it's in the moment, and it's the reality of the person experiencing that. And it's felt that way. Now, the piece about the back, the neck, and the muscles of the social engagement system, which is the face, as well as the ventral vagal body links, is really what we work with in with traumatic symptoms. In other words, eventually we can get to reflect on the meaning of them. However, the first order of business is to help people regulate their nervous system in order to be able to do the work. Now, every patient I see, I start with some sort of 3-minute or 2-minute grounding exercise. I don't call it that. I said, let's land together. And especially on the screen, I invite people I guide a meditation. It could be 2 minutes. It could be the 3 breaths like I just showed you before we start. And people can wait, because they know that your interest is their comfort more than anything else, they're happy to go along with that. And that lowers the immediate distress level of what they're coming in with. It doesn't take away, but it lowers it enough so you can be in a range of tolerance to do some more work. So the next slide speaks to that. And I'll show you what I do for orienting. This is compliments of Roy, the mental health issues for both adults and children. That's on the slides as well. And what all of this is, the 6 sessions that we're providing is really embodied emotional first aid. And if you'll look down at down where you see grounding and resourcing, through the universal language of the body is the emphasis at the beginning. Before you can touch a trauma state, you have to help people identify their resources. And a resource is anything or anybody whose presence you're in offers a sense of soothing and calm without paying too high of a price for it. So I don't often suggest people use their children or a relationship where there's a lot of conflict as a resource. Or if they want to, what I say is, so let's let the annoying part rest and let's just have you focus on the good part of that person. And that works well too. With everybody, you need to resource them before you can get into trauma at all. And resourcing them helps them self-regulate and lower the distress level. The whole issue with the nervous system activation is if we can first lower the distress level, we can help bring people into the range of manageability. And these next slides will show you what I'm talking about. Now, let me just show you this, the other one. When we calm the body, the mind will follow. This is sacrosanct in somatic trauma work. And I'll read this slide. When the unimaginable and the impossible becomes reality, thoughts and words collapse, as does a sense of time. Shock trauma and developmental trauma live in the body and in the nervous system as unremembered, unbearable states of emotional dysregulation, which often present as anxiety, depression, dissociation, and/or somatic symptoms. Try to see if you can just adopt this phrase for yourselves and work with it. When we calm the body, the mind will follow. Not the other way around, not with this level of activation. We have to bring in movement, we have to bring in resources to calm the nervous system first. And here's why in the next few slides. This is the brain, the trion brain as it's called. It's a lot more complicated than this, but for our purposes, this will do. Again, in writing, the neocortex, the limbic system, and the brainstem. What I'm going to do now is give you 3 minutes of neurobiology, and I do this with all of my patients. Most of them suffer from anxiety or feelings that they don't want to feel. As Mark Solm said, people come to us because they have bad feelings. They want us to help them get rid of those feelings, and no such thing, because you can't get rid of a feeling. We're pre-wired to feel certain things. And that's another lesson in something else. But what I'm going to show you now is what I do with all of my patients. So here's your quick 3-minute lesson in neurobiology. Can everybody see me? This is Dan Siegel's brain. Is everybody able to see me and my hand? Is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the reason this is your brain is not because it's shaped like a fist, because it's actually this, and I need the other with. So this is what how Dan Siegel shows the brain. The brain in this model is in this shape because everything is connected, not because it's a fist, because everything is connected. So we have the brain stem, which is the survival brain, and it's very large, and the brain stem developmentally comes online first in utero. Then we have the limbic system, the emotional brain, where memories are stored and feelings get activated. And then we have the neocortex. Now, developmentally, in utero, this is how the brain develops. We start from the bottom up, the spinal cord and up, and then we expand out as well. So development and growth is both this way and that way, okay? So, and to full development. Now, here's what happens. When the brainstem is reasonably calm, remember, it's the survival brain. Its only function is to detect threat. This is evolutionary. And when it does, it only has three possibilities: fight, flight, or freeze. The freeze response is what often we see in dissociation, or it's like being dead while being alive. Now, a lot of the backdrop of this comes from Peter Levine's work and the animal kingdom, but this is what we all have. We all have a survival brain. This has nothing to do with smarts or IQ or anything else. The survival brain and the emotional brain, the limbic system, where the amygdala is and such other structures, you can see it on this, are always together. And when everything is manageable, the neocortex is at rest and online and can function. However, when your insides feel like they're a pressure cooker and it's like a mix master in your gut, this is what happens in trauma. The neocortex goes offline. When people say they can't think, they mean it. Many of us are having thinking problems right now because of the disorientation that we all feel. But, you know, with kids, and Sue will be able to comment on this, and hopefully she will share some information as well at another time. You know, you have these anxious kids and they say they can't think. Well, they're accurate. They can't think while their distress level is so high, because this is the brain in that level of distress. If you calm down this part of the brain and the nervous system, which I'll show you in a minute, this is what happens. The neocortex, which doesn't go away, it's held by fibers here, and there are these fibers that connect it, begins to come back online. And even when it's halfway online, thinking can happen. Maybe not clear, but you can think a little bit more. So when kids say to teachers, I can't think, or to parents, and the response is try harder or think better, no, it will not work. And that's why. So Dan Siegel with children, when he uses this model, he calls this, oh, you flipped your lid, meaning your emotions are running the show. And we have to help you get your lid back on gently in a way that's the most helpful. Now, while your brain is like this, it is in the range of manageability. So let's go to the next slide. And this is, no, back me up. No, let's go before that. What happened? Okay, no, let me just, no. Nora, I don't know what's happening, but I need to get back to the slide right after that. No, this is at the very bottom.
Debbie, let me take control and I'll get you to the right slide.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I told you, this is my downfall, my abilities to use the technology of today. Okay, stop. No, go back. Thank you. No, go back. Not that was forward. Go back, back some more. Thank you. Keep going back. That's it. Stop. Okay. No. Can we have the next slide, please? That's it. Stop here. Thank you. Okay. Now, I do this with my patients as well. This is the nervous system. And the first line is the sympathetic nervous system, is the border of the sympathetic nervous system. And the line on the bottom is the parasympathetic. And for the sake of clarity, I call the sympathetic the arousal level and the parasympathetic the relaxation response. Anything that happens between these two lines is in the range of manageability. Doesn't mean you're in a good mood necessarily. You start the day, you go out, you get irritated by something, that happens, you get annoyed, then you have your cup of coffee and maybe you feel a little bit better for a few minutes. But it's the normal range that we all encounter in the stream of life. Everything here is manageable. Now, the next slide will show you, okay, what's not manageable. If you spike out of the range of manageability, let's say there's an arousal spike that goes through that line and stays up there, I think you can all see it. If you tend to encounter something that will throw you into high arousal, and normally if that happens, there's a little switch, if you use that metaphor, at the point of the spike that will come online when the distress level is lowered, and slowly you will get back into the range of motion. If you are there too often or too long, that switch is broken. And then what we have is excessive anxiety, hyperarousal, anything above this line, racing heart pulse, racing thoughts, speech is also up here, as well as dissociation. Now, what happens with the law of gravity? Whatever goes up eventually has to come down, right? That's the law of gravity. So when you're spiked up here and you come down, you're going to go crashing down below the line of the relaxation response. And everything below that line shows up as exhaustion, disconnection, dissociation, depression, numbness, and you're stuck at that level unless we can help the person move back up into the range of manageability. The way we do this, go to the next slide. Thank you. This is a good example of what the nervous system is all about. The arousal is the SNS. The parasympathetic is the relaxation response. And the best example I can use, and I don't necessarily use this with my patients, but when soldiers go to war, when they're gearing up to go to war, their arousal level has to be sky high. In preparation, their parasympathetic level drops. Food is not compelling, appetite is decreased, sex, who wants it at that point? The whole system is geared towards the battle. And they're up there all the time. And you know, with veterans and with PTSD, what happens is when they come back to their real lives, their nervous system is still highly aroused and in a state of total distress, and they cannot absorb what they're coming back to because of the acute hyperarousal and hypervigilance that they are in all the time. Now, there are ways we can help through calming the nervous system. So, bottom line, can you see me still? Can everybody see me? When your brain is like this, your nervous system is in the range of manageability. When your brain is like that, your nervous system is hyper-aroused or hypo-aroused. Both sides of the spectrum show up when the neocortex literally goes offline. So linking these two things together, the brain and the nervous system, gives you the whole map of the neurobiology of trauma. Now, why is this so important? Because a lot of our people are spiking up all the time. And that's what happens when you're in the state of mind that we're in. And calming the nervous system is the mechanism for bringing them back into the range of possibility and manageability. So I want to show you something here. This is the freeze and discharge. It's a summary of the trauma process, which I'm not going into now. I want to show you experientially, Sue, and this will hopefully speak to some of the question that you raised. It's a big question. The language of empathy and the felt sense is our guide. And you cannot talk a person down from one of these states. You can't. So what has to happen is we have to lower their distress level first. And in the attachment literature, that is first and foremost, lowering distress levels. And the language of the felt sense is, I love this slide because it really highlights, it includes eye contact, muscle, facial expression, posture, emotions, tone of voice, hearing holistically, in other words, without screening out certain pieces of information, and of course, the response of compassion and understanding. When you do this work, you're always inviting people to join you. And when I ask somebody to do something, I never let them do it alone. I'm always doing it with them. How are we doing on time? Because I want to show you something concrete that you can take with you right now.
It's almost 11, so we have about half hour.
Okay, so let me do this and then we'll open it up for questions, and then I'll go next week. I'll talk about grounding and how you resource your clients and how you resource yourself. Because if we do not manage our regulation issues, we can be of no help to anyone. And that's why that first slide really captures it for me with the suit and the warm fuzzy slippers. Okay, so I'd like you all to do something with me now that I invite people to do when they're first starting a session. I ground them, we land, and then I invite them to do the following. And you guys do it with me too, because if you don't include motion and self-touch, we're missing at least half of the screen. So, and I'm inviting all of you to put your hands out this way at your sides, all the way. No, extend them out with your palm. No, Jess, down and out. Okay, like this. Can everybody see me? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So now what I'd like you to do is slowly bring your hands back or forward and until they meet. But as you move your hands, pause at the point where you actually can see your hands through your peripheral vision. Everybody there? Paused, and now continue and bring your hands slowly in together to meet. And then allow yourself to give yourself a self hug, which is this. Okay? Now, I'll explain in a minute as to why this is so important, but I think you all know that without touch, even self-touch, we're missing one of the senses for sure. And people who can't touch other people now can do their own work in terms of self-regulation and touch. It may not be the same, but it sure matters. So do it again now with me, because I want to give you an example of how you could do it in different ways. Put your arms out again, extend them, bring them forward together, and now put one hand under your armpit, like hold it like this, under your shoulder, and the other hand over here. That hug is the hug of existence. When we pick up babies, we always pick them up from under their arms, don't we? This is a way of knowing that you exist. And it's very powerful. And when you invite people to do this, just the motion, and you can explain to them why you're doing this, and then have them go into this position. What did you guys notice? What did any of you notice when you actually had your hands wrapped around you? Which position felt better? It varies. Somebody?
Felt supported.
You felt supported. Any one better than the other? How about when you did this?
Yeah, no, with that one. Yeah.
That one. Okay, I'm asking for distinction. Some people prefer this, some people prefer this. It's fine. There's no right or wrong. But just remember that babies, this is the way they get picked up, first and foremost, because they can't hold themselves up, we know. And it's interesting because organically, this is what we do with babies. So giving yourself a self-hug matters. Anybody else? Which did you notice?
We have a hand raised from Sahar.
Okay. Can we unmute you?
Yeah, I'm unmuted, I think.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to share, thank you so much, first of all. It's always been an area of interest to get into this type of work, and it's just a blessing to be able to have this opportunity. Years and years ago, I remember from my undergraduate neurobiology class that the peripheral vision,
Yeah, I was going to
eye cells, okay, so.
No,
right.
you can say what you, please share it, because I will expand on that.
So the peripheral vision, the cells that are in the retina that are around that peripheral vision, they activate into the amygdala because they are responsible for detecting threats in the periphery. So when you're starting with when you're starting with your hands out, you're working from the peripheral, you're activating the amygdala, and then you're directing it back to the central stream, which is a different set of cells, and you take it from there.
So thank you so much for laying the groundwork for this. You said it in a much more articulate fashion than I will, but I just want to expand on that. In trauma, I said to you, orienting responses go offline. People become tunnel visioned and they lose their peripheral vision. And these kind of exercise are a way of expanding the range that we normally have, except if you're traumatized. In a car accident, when you've been in a car accident and people drive after that, they tend to look straight ahead. They tend to be so focused on what's in front of them that if they get sideswiped from the side, they won't even see it coming. So tunnel vision is something we go into in trauma and losing the orienting response. So this is a way of, by the way, it activates the amygdala, but it also links to the neocortex because the optic nerve in the eyes links to the neocortex as well. So eyes like this. And remember, I always say emotions are affects in motion. The only way they get expressed is verbally or through gesture or through some action. That's the only mechanism we have for expressing emotions. Now, if the words are not available, then it's going to be the body that shows itself. and listening to the body and learning to detect the signs. Like if you know shame signs, you can detect it even on the screen. And I'll get into that too. But the peripheral vision going offline is one of the most important things that we need to restore. And there's another orienting exercise, but which I might show you, I might not today, but I'd like to open this up now for questions first, for a Q&A.
And you can use the hand raise tool on your Zoom. So you'll click participants and then you'll see raise hand as an option.
Do we have anybody coming?
If there are
forward?
no hands raised, I wouldn't mind sharing a thought by Paul Zak.
Sure.
When I was doing my master's in neuropsychology at Queens College, we were encouraged to read a book by Paul Zak called The Moral Molecule. And in this book, he talks about the central function of touch. And he suggests that giving a hug releases
it does,
oxytocin, which makes us feel
Yes.
bonded and close to one another. But it also makes us feel happy and safe. So
Yeah,
the idea
oxytocin is the
of
bonding hormone. Yeah.
physical distancing has resulted in an impairment of this connectedness. So when you talked about giving yourself a self-hug, it's very important. I actually heard him speak once at APA, and he gave out magnets that said 8 hugs a day.
Oh,
That's
great.
the prescription to happiness. So
Thank you. Dan.
that's my thought on this.
Okay, I need to add to that though. What you might find with some is you invite them to do that. The pain of not having a hug from anybody else might come up as well. So you have to be prepared to uncouple those two things. In the language of SC, we need to work with the different states, but we can't if they're glommed together. If the pain of loss is glommed together with the self-hug, like this, the only way to work with it is to uncouple these two states and work with each state separately. And I have an exercise like this that I do with people. And again, I'm going to note all these exercises for next time because I really want to give you tools next time on how to do this work. And Sue, am I getting close to responding to the fear question that you raised? Is Sue still on? Okay, maybe not. So I'll ask her
Muted.
privately.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, but yes.
And
This is
how about and?
and
Yes,
what-
and.
let me say my own words, please. I
No, I'm telling you, I do this with everybody. It's not a but, it's an and.
Well,
Go on.
what I want to say is, in my own words, is that the
Good.
experience. These exercises are wonderful. What I was and they are absolutely right on target. So I want to thank you for that. What I was reacting to was the initial poem, which I thought we have to be careful what we present, because I think knowing the people with whom I've worked, that would be a very negative trigger, which would not be the way I'd want to start out. I know that's not what's intended, but it had a quality of, this is such a wonderful time, can be, to rethink and that's not where many people are who are in the throes of awful trauma. That's all I was reacting
No,
to.
that's
And
fine.
yes, you are answering. Now, I just feel that what you're saying now was a bit disjunctive from what the poem, it was only about the poem. It wasn't
No
about
problem.
the rest of
Thank
the
you for sharing
Hello.
that.
Hello,
Okay.
Evelyn. Hi, this is Dorita. I just wanted to comment that, this idea of hugging and so forth, I found that like the pet therapy, having a pet, it can have a very calming
Absolutely.
effect on people.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, pets, the dog is the closest to man. And did you know that if you see a dog and you want to make eye contact with that dog, that will not happen. You have to wait for the dog to look at you first, because, and try it out with your dogs if you have it, or another dog. Their gifts, and when it's on their terms, they'll be very responsive to you. But if you try to get their attention, like look at me, like we do sometimes with infants, it won't work. So try it. Thank you.
And Evie, we have 2 hand raises.
Okay, great.
First, Betsy Landau.
I'm actually interested in this peripheral vision.
In what? Sorry, I can't hear you well.
I'm interested in this peripheral vision using the
Great.
hands to bring you back to present. And I wanted to know more about it. Is there anybody in particular who is working with it or has
Yeah, the whole SE community. This is what we're doing. We're working with body states, and my goal is to integrate this work with psychoanalytically or dynamic work, psychoanalytically informed work, and I've done private supervision groups integrating those two exactly. So whatever I'm giving you now is a tool just to add to your own practice and to work with it in any way that works for you. I'm not looking to change anybody's skills. We're all seasoned clinicians. So I respect that. And soon your animal is getting into the picture. How lovely. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Did you
it
want
froze,
to say
so
more?
here, is there, where did this idea come from?
Okay. So this idea, actually, I sent the whole listserv a booklet by Peter Levine.
Oh, is Peter Levine's work?
Yeah, that's Peter Levine's. It's like the SE course summarized in 5 pages.
Oh, okay.
That's out of print, but I originally scanned it a while ago. And so I sent it all to you. It could be a primer for this kind of work.
That's great.
So you'll get more of it also with the tools. I'm going to show you lots of different things to do when the words are not enough, and how to look at the body signals even on the screen. I had a psychiatrist I was working with. He was very interesting. He said when he changed, they all changed to screen time. So doing their assessments on the screen. So he said one thing that was fascinating. He said, because he's looking so closely, rather than sitting in the office with a patient, which is a few 3 feet, 6 feet apart, he said he detected in the patient that he was working with the beginning of, I think he said palsy.
Wow.
And because he got such a close view of the face that he wouldn't have gotten in his office. Isn't that interesting?
It very, very.
I thought that was fascinating. It would have showed up eventually, but do we have another hand?
Yes, June Fetter.
Hi, June. I introduced you before, so take a bow now.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the effort that you and Dan are making to pull this operation together. Just from my own experience, I know how challenging it can be to, you know, to take the steps to pull together a disaster response operation.
Yes, because you did just
you
that.
know, yeah, I did it, and you know, every disaster is different, and so that's one of the challenges, to really come up with a protocol, with protocols and approaches to doing the work with each individual person that you're working with, but also in terms of the actual nature of the disaster itself. One of the things that I wanted to ask Evie, because this is such interesting work, and I don't remember when we were doing the training 20 years ago for 9/11 that, you know, that we really included this particular component.
No.
But since most
couldn't
of
have been.
us, right, since most of us are going to be doing the disaster work in short-term
Mhm.
time modules, you know, that we're going to be seeing
That's
people
why
for no more than a short-term,
6
certainly
sessions.
not beyond six
Yes, 6.
sessions.
We're doing 6.
And if they need more, there would be a pathway for making referrals. Have you worked in this modality for short-term approaches?
Yes, and
So maybe
I've worked
that
here and in Israel, and where I also run these supervision groups, because if you open up a session and ask yourself, what's it like to be in that body, meaning your patient's body? Just ask yourself that question. You don't have to do anything else, but that awareness will take you very far. What's it like to be in that? I do that in person all the time. I ask myself that question. I don't ask the patient yet, but eventually we get to that. And
so it's a good sort. So it's a good way of gathering
start,
information.
yes. And
Initial
that's what,
information.
right. And that's what we call somatic resonance. And you can do this on screen as well. Maybe a little harder, but you know what goes with that thought? Whenever I have that thought, the next thing out of my mouth, which is not necessarily what we do as analysts, but right now I'm suspending all divides. I ask the person, I'm interested in making you as comfortable as you can be. Comfort is important to me, and that's why it's important for me to make sure you're comfortable. I can't tell you how many people have been blown away by that statement. Nobody has ever said that to them. Not in a treatment. That's
Right.
the implication of all of this. And in short-term work, if you ask them, how am I close enough? Am I far enough? Would you like to move forward or backwards to test out what feels best for you? Include them in the process from the beginning, and you will be doing the work. Nothing fancier is required other than the awareness of two bodies, even in a two-dimensional field. And being in touch with your own body and what's happening for you is really the key of learning to work this way. Because you will have reactions in the body when we're dysregulated. We all know we're dysregulated, but I'm not even talking about that. When you're listening to other people, it penetrates not only into what you hear, but what you feel. And if you take the time to just get in touch with that a little bit more, that's the somatic resonance that is being conveyed. So Lombardi talks about that. Peter Levine talks about all of that. Some analysts speak to the somatic resonance. Mark Solms is a beautiful example of incorporating this without even naming it. You don't have to name this. You don't have to say you're doing SC. You don't have to say, and for some people, the word body is triggering. So I don't necessarily use it. I use the word nervous system. Because for some people, it's very triggering if you use the word body. So you have to know the parameters to begin with. So if you're in doubt, always use nervous system to begin with. And that's why I give people that 5-minute lesson. And I draw it out. I don't use charts like I did here. And they'll often ask me whether they can take that paper home. And I'm happy that they do. But seeing it on a screen, you don't take it in the same way. So that's why I do that in person. But this was a short example of that. So think about the first order of business once you meet someone. What's it like to be in their body? Of course, listen to what they're saying. But in the short-term work, you've got to have a focus. The focus has to be on helping people work their way through what's happening now, the 2020 pandemic, And you bet your life other traumas are going to come up, because trauma is cumulative, and what shapes us is what shapes us. Anybody now who has experienced 9/11, and the closer to the site, the more is being activated now doubly. And if you have developmental trauma, triple and quadruple that. But we cannot deal with all the traumas in this work. So your goal has to be stay present-centered, name what is, if someone tells you, oh, this is just like 9/11, then you have a good example of how to speak to them about that. Yes, because trauma is held in the body and in the nervous system. So what you remember first from 9/11 would probably be some of the senses that you experienced, right? And that's what's happening now. So many people are triggered by that and what's happening now. My husband is a good example of that. And I shared with you in another conference his experience with 9/11 and the somatic work that helped him. So there's a long history of this kind of work, but for our purposes, when you meet someone, make sure they're comfortable, make sure what questions you're willing to respond to is short term, and you have to figure out what your boundaries are. And the focus is on the pandemic, the quickness of it, and how it's hijacked our lives. And then the other traumas will pop up, or even if they don't, in your head, you know that that has to be gotten to, but not in these 6 sessions. Because if you go there, you will have lost the thread. This is not long-term work. And this is why I'm calling this emotional first aid. And the first order of business is to give people some tools, I think, just to be able to get to cope through this and adapt. Most people are very adaptive and resilient, and we see that now. The problem is, once the adaptation becomes normalized and becomes a habit, that's when people start complaining. Oh, that's why you have the protesters. They want things opened up. Well, knock yourself out. Open them up on your own time and space, not on ours. You know what I'm saying? So that's the normal paradigm of evolution, revolution, and it continues generationally. So I think we're almost at the end.
Right before we have a couple more questions we might be able to get to, but before we do that, could I ask everybody to please type your name into the chat box? I'm also going to type a message in the chat box. Please type your full name so that we can keep attendance records and for certification purposes. If you are having trouble finding the chat box, it is at the bottom. You'll see chat. If you're on the phone calling in, please email nisba@nisba.org just saying I attended the DRN training session on Sunday, and we'll collect it that way. I know there's a couple of people who you might just be on the phone and not have your computer tied into it. And if anyone has any issue accessing the chat box, again, you can contact us at nisba@nisba.org.
And if you have questions, please write them down. I'm going to continue this next week, and I'm going to focus more on the tools and self-regulation and mutual regulation, even on screens, because you can do that. So I'm going to focus on the applications. And again, we'll formulate what your treatment plan needs to look like, obviously based on who's coming in. But again, short-term focused work. And if you let that be your guide, then the body signals that you're getting will be an exponential added asset.
Evie, do we know the dates of the next training or trainings yet?
It's going to be next Sunday morning, and we're going to do how do people feel about an hour and a half? Can I have some opinions quickly?
It works well. It gives us a chance to, think about the approach you're going to use, and then we have the discussion. I think it takes time.
It does take time. Would people be okay with an hour and a half for the training modules? We can intersperse them with regular meetings, but for the purpose of informing and giving you the tools that are available from this model, and you all have tools available from the way you work. So I'm not interested in being a one-man show. I'm interested in integrating everything. So if you have some ideas that you already do, I'm hoping you'll share them. So can we agree to an hour and a half for now? Next week.
That's good.
Is that okay? Thank you. Okay.
And
Nora?
I see, yes, and I just see people are typing in their questions. Feel free. I'm going to download the entire chat. So if you type in
Great.
questions we didn't get to, I can compile them and send them to get answered.
Okay, great. So with that said, I really appreciate the time and the opportunity, and thank you. And from the bottom of my heart, or as one person says, the heart of my bottom. From the bottom of the heart and the heart of the bottom. That was an SE trainer once. There are certain things you'll never forget when you hear them. All right, so thank you again.
Thank you, Evie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evie.
And have a great day, guys. And those of us who are going on to the council meeting, take a break for a minute.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thank
Give
you.
yourself a hug.
It was really good. Thank you.
I definitely will. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.